Now that we're moving into this more modern era, where the arquebuses, where the fire step includes only half the infantry, we saw one of the things that maybe we'll start to see more and more to come. So we got the Spanish tercios, right? They got a 4 morale instead of actually making a 5 morale, right? Because they've got they may have been misdoing this. Base of 3 brings it up to 4 or 5 with regular units. That's hard to break, but okay. Good rolls here on a quick battle between William of Nassau, who you see is still there, and Farnese, who you see is not. I don't remember what the results were, but the Spaniards took, I think, 2 stars on the first fire table. The Dutch took 1. Okay, great. Not really there. 2 more stars for the Spanish. That's not going to break them. 1 star for the Dutch. Again, neither side would have broken, although the rate of collection of stars is high enough on decent rolls that a militia army might break. But these are both high-quality armies. But the damage has gotten high enough that on good rolls, the entire Spanish army was just dissolved. And it was enough losses that it counted as a major victory. So there's 2 swing points in terms of peace negotiations or whatever in favor of the Dutch. Not that peace is going to break out anytime soon there. But here's what's big. They cleared the Spaniards out of there. The Dutch may win this war overall because Spain's got such a hard time getting anything there. They don't have the Spanish road anymore. From Naples, they can sort of get close. They can get as far as Amelia because they have an alliance with the papacy. But that's it. So no matter what, they're going to have to do naval transport. And that's painful. First of all, it takes time and effort, etc. It's a little risky in that if the Dutch can grab the whole coast, it becomes really, really difficult for them. But maybe the worst thing is they have to make these attrition checks to sail there. Now, they're not bad checks, but they're not good either. This one's a 6. They don't have any land here, so they really do have a significant chance of losing a big part of their force. It's as hard to get stuff to the Netherlands for the Spaniards as it is to get it to England, basically. All right. The Spanish focus on getting their army to South America. They want to take the Incas out. They feel they need that. They don't think that they can win or lose the Dutch war from my prior experience. But these events are a little different. They've got an army here to take the move into the Dutch territories. Interestingly, this kind of fits their leadership. This is a weird thing. So this leader's lower ranked. He's a regular general than the conquistador in the New World. A strict interpretation of the rules, as they're written, says that that conquistador had to be in command of one of the 2 armies in play. And there was one here and one here. Farnese gets one, the conquistador would get the other. Now, I bend those because I don't think anyone should ever have to commit troops outside Europe. For example, if Spain had nothing outside Europe, if they had not colonized take a Protestant Spain that may have those problems actually in maintaining that, or whatever. Maybe they just failed. If they have no interest in the external world, they should not have to commit their armies there. On the other hand, there's always some interest in maintaining a home force of some sort. And I don't mind requiring... So basically, I make conquistadors an option. You can use them in their position in the hierarchy, but if you choose to, you can also pass them over. But if you don't, you can't pass one over and not the other, for example. So if your focus is supposed to be, I don't know, I kind of fake it, but if your focus is supposed to be North America and you're playing in India, you may have a problem there. All really depends on my mood at the time, though, because these rules are not really well settled. And as I said, if you follow them exactly as written, they force you to have troops where you can't. So, like, a leader might be forced to be somewhere where he can't even lead troop. Well, he's forced to be in a certain location, but you have no troops there. So you have to get him troops. But he has to command those troops before you can get them to him, and he can't. And it's just, there's just so many contradictions in it. So you kind of say, well, I'll try to do my best. And that works pretty well solitaire. I don't know how well it's going to work in an opposed game. I kind of breezed over it, and that's one of the reasons I believe you need to have someone run this game when playing opposed. It could be one of the players, but it has to be someone with sort of that deciding, so you don't get into bogged into these rules questions. Okay. So anyway, the Turks on their turn managed to finally take Croatia and land a siege on Miraz. Now, Austria's decided its bigger threat is the religious one, and they've actually en masse moved up to deal with Bohemia instead. They're going to let the Turks gain some advantages here. Turkey's not doing too well in the game, so Spain doesn't really mind if Turkey gets a hunk of Austria off this war. I forgot to deal with my buddies here, though, who are going to lay siege, and I didn't roll them. Anyway, that's actually the end of the first round. I think I forgot to mention there was kind of a balance between the Bavarians and Palatinate. The Bavarians moved in to attack the Palatinate out in Württemberg. Went poorly for both, and both had to withdraw, so they both took attrition losses. Neither side lost or won the battle, but they both took significant losses to the extent that it looks unlikely that either Bavaria or Palatinate's going to go under in this turn. Hard to tell. Could be a long turn. Who knows? The Austrian army could slide up and be able to deal with Bohemia as well as the Palatinate. Alternatively, there is another battle left, and there's certainly Bavaria, at least, is very weak and could fall. And their army's a little weaker as well. All right, into that second round. And, oh, you know what else we forgot? The army of Kazan got completely destroyed. And now the Russians are going to be able to detach half of that, continue the siege. Yes, that may reduce their chances of a successful siege, but not by much. Basically, they'd have a hard time storming that city anyway, so they're hoping for good rolls, long round, whatever. And then they can send some forces up in here. Unfortunately, they have two leaders who outrank the hetman, so they do, like last turn, have to send, actually three. They have Kubiaski too. They have to send a rest of the world leader who happens to be the higher ranked guy. So he has to take as many armies out to face Siberia, which they still haven't resolved. Well, at least there wasn't a trivially early ending this time. Still playing on, obviously. What has happened? Well, the Dutch pushed into siege here at Hainaut, clearing up their revolts. Mansfeld was driven back again. Habsburgs have pushed in. Ooh, I didn't roll that siege. And set up a siege in Bohemia, but they got repelled here, although they knocked the leader out for a while. Turks gained another one and started another siege here at Pex, which I don't believe I rolled either. As well as bringing some troops over to try to handle the Persians. Russians got defeated by the Siberians. Not actually defeated, but driven back again at heavy losses. It looks like they're not going to be able to handle them this turn. That's a painful situation. England explored and discovered part of Haiti, but they lost their explorer for it, and they're going to have to make their way back. We got the Dutch heading down the coast of Africa. They may actually want to be dealing more with the Spaniards at this point. It's later in the game that they really want to engage more with the Portuguese. And we got a Spanish privateer dealing with them here. Spanish Gold Fleet made it back, and we've got another expedition by Farnese planning to go in and try to deal with the Dutch straight up there. That may be a conscript army, so they may be more interested in trying to quell the revolts for now and use it as a full value army later if they don't get pinned down by William's forces. Alright, I guess that's about it for this round. End of 3 rounds. Dutch beginning to explore over here, continuing their sieges, etc. Turks pushing forward with theirs, positioning themselves. Turns out the Persians are up to a plus now, so I think the Turks have to actually make an attack to try to relieve that siege. They were kind of hoping maybe it would just go away, let them continue grabbing territories up here in the Austrian areas. Speaking of the Austrians, again, Franz Joseph beaten back here. Again, Mansfeld was killed this time, but he was killed along with a Habsburg leader, so there's no modifications to the peace thing there. Farnese tried to send him over. The Dutch took a risky move. They had a very small fleet, only 5 ships here, but they went out to fight, and they succeeded in sinking much of the Spanish fleet. The Spanish are really unable to launch anything down there. They've got 5 transports. They could try moving the galleys there. I think there's rules for that. I'm not sure. I'll have to look for that. That's certainly, if they can get those galleys up there, they've got a very potent force. But I'm not sure that they're even allowed to move outside of the Mediterranean here. I know in the computer game they can do it and they all sink. But here I don't think you're even allowed to try. The advantage of this, though, now the Dutch fleet can sail down here, kind of blockade Andalusia and sink that Spanish privateer who's being kind of a thorn in their side. That's not quite it. I haven't made a check, actually. That was the end of 3. Yeah. Okay, so we still got a turn going. Always an important check. But yeah, that looks really, really bad for the Spaniards, because if the Dutch can, solidify this, there's not a lot Spain can really do about it. They may just have to give up this war and give up the Burgundian inheritance. I don't know. Alright, we had another round pass here. And we got some replacement points for some people. I don't remember what this... Oh, this is to distinguish that this is a Bohemian leader, I believe. And the Turks are going to get this guy back. They just lost him this time. And he'll go back where he came from. Okay, so what did we have happen? Dutch clearing out their revolts here. They got rid of the privateers. The Spanish, I looked up, they indeed cannot send their galleys outside of the Mediterranean. Historically, they probably would have been able to, especially so very close, but they would have been very troubled out there. The Turks have pushed forward, taken Pex now. They're continuing their siege here. They drove the Persians off. They're having a really good turn this turn. The Russians took Kazan, and that'll be surrendering. And now they can actually gather their forces and maybe be able to take out Siberia all at once. We'll see. Alright, onward. We had the roll. There was no interference. A lot of people have stopped playing, like the English. They don't have their Explorer anymore, so they don't want to, spend money to do nothing. Spain even has stopped because there are only armies down here other than the one up in the Incan area. And they're really having trouble. They need a navy to have any chance against the Dutch now, it looks like. They just have no route going north. Unless they can get an ally. Maybe they can get Venice as an ally or something. They've got to get into the Holy Roman Empire territory in order to be able to reach through a Spanish road type path. Into the next round. And not much is moving here. So even like the Habsburgs, well, they actually made a new siege. But everybody's kind of afraid, even if they're not out of money, the turn's going to end soon, and laying a siege, making new advances isn't going to really help them. Russians positioned themselves to move into Siberia. They made the attack. It didn't work. They lost the leader that they've been using to get across there. They couldn't get through this turn, but when they get Hetman back, they'll be able to create a notional army minus there. Basically what they're doing is they're splitting the army so that everybody can have a command, and they can barely do this, but it's kind of a cheaty, gamey sort of way of handling things. But the thing is, the hierarchical restrictions, who can command what, are just so strict in this game that you gotta kind of believe that that's allowable. Alright. Anyway, yeah, we see the knights tried to slip out against the Turks, and that's going to be hard to beat because it's so late in the turn. In fact, it could have just rolled to end the turn. It came within 1. I rolled a 5. I needed a 4 or less. Well, continuing with this nice rich turn, and yes, it is continuing. Well, the Dutch are still having trouble here. They got a breach, but weren't able to get into Hainaut. It's hard to take a city by storm. It really is. Unless you have overwhelming numbers, really, and it's just kind of painful. No, I forgot to move the Turks out. I have to take care of that. But the Habsburgs tried to relieve Transylvania, and they got caught by the Turkish army and completely wiped out. Actually, the Turkish army would have been demoralized on that second roll, and they were, but their numerical power and their own good roll just wiped the Hungarian army out at once. We also see the Siberians not completely disappear, but that one space has fallen. Once they get 2 spaces, the Russians, no, they need 3. Once they get 3 spaces, the Russians will have cleared Siberia and essentially defeated it, and then can start their colonization, not only of Siberia, but everywhere east of that is blocked by it. I guess that's about it right now. And it is indeed a long one, pushing on into round 8. The Russians attacked Siberia here. Didn't get any traction. Austrians, Habsburgs got a breach there, failed to take it. Do finally have Hainaut falling. It's going to make it kind of tough. The Dutch have Luxembourg and Nord they can conquer, but for the most part they're probably going to use whatever points they have left to gain their economic advantage by reducing those revolts. Likewise, they're sailing back here, discovering all the territories Spain already knows about, just in order to be able to raid them. Next turn they're going to put the vice on Spain in terms of cracking their external. They've already dealt with the Spanish privateers. Now they're going to start building their privateers and setting out raiding. And you might see the English doing the same with their sea dogs. They've got the special ability to raid without having to be at war. So that's going to be kind of an enticement on their side. The Turks ran out of money, and they had to pull back from Magyar, which they had intercepted into, and Transylvania, which they were sieging but couldn't get any complete activation in place there. This might mean that we're going to see the Persians move forward into Aleppo this turn. Their chances are low, but if they can gain it, it gives them a significant advantage in terms of any peace agreement that Turkey could come to with the Persians. Alright, and a quick wind up there. The Dutch didn't manage to do anything with their revolts, although they did discover the Puerto Rican Sea. I forgot to move those guys. Hey, that's okay. You know, it's one of the problems is things that I forget that are really important, I make up for, but things that might have hurt or are kind of iffy, I leave alone. And in this case, well, I would have left it alone either way. The Habsburgs failed to take Carlsbad, And we're about to move into the peace segment and see, what can be resolved here. Probably not a hell of a lot. The Spanish still want to keep this war going. They've got very little to lose for this period. They can leave it running for the entire period, especially while, well, maybe not. But I was going to say, especially while they're involved in the 30s war, but Spain actually isn't yet. Elsewhere, well, the Russians cleared out another space in Siberia. So they've got two of, what? Oh, it's only 4 spaces? No, it's 5 spaces. So they've still got to get another space, and that's going to put them at a serious penalty for this turn because they started this war last turn. So they're going to have a -3 to their stability. They're probably not going to recover from this real quickly, but they do want to finish the war. They can't ask for a peace without causing problems where maybe, I don't know, Siberia recovers these spaces or whatever. I really don't know, and I don't want to try to justify it all. They want to finish this war. Okay, so we're netting out and cashing in, as it were. When I looked at the victory points at the end of all this, well, actually Russia's doing pretty well. They picked up some serious gain here. Turkey did as well, as did Venice. The big loser, of course, was Spain. They're struggling with this thing. It's expected that Spain has a lot of points already in the bank. Ooh, I forgot to add their 5 extra, though. That kind of helps make up for some of the problems that they're facing right now. But we can see from stability that, the Dutch are holding up pretty well, but some of these other powers are having real trouble with the wars that they've got underway. Of course, the Russians, they can solve their war. The Turks, Persia's such a pain in their butt. That's all it comes down to. They don't really want to fight this war. They want to fight the wars that count. They want to take the Mamluks out and everything, but they just don't have an option to do so. However, the Turks did solve the... let's see. They would have been here. They got a peace with the Austrians. That bumps them up there, and they only get 1 off for the Persians, so I'm going to give them a couple extra points as well. Basically, they got a full peace, not a 5-pointer. They didn't go for that, but they went for the 4-pointer and ended up getting Maraz, Pex, and Croatia all from the Habsburgs. They had a huge bonus on them because of the territories they've taken, because of the battles they've won. So they managed to expand quite a bit, and that's a powerful advantage for them. I'm going to have to put a bunch of new pashas in play, which of course will cut their income down, especially with the pillage in place. But they were running right up against the Habsburg home territories, which is a problem for the Spaniards. They counted on having that padding, and I think they took that as a victory condition. So they're going to have to go back to war with Turkey, but they want to resolve the 30 Years' War first, and of course the Dutch revolt. One thing to note, at least for me, keeping track of the victory points is really an inexact science. Along with everything else in the game, you're not going to get perfection, I think. And especially playing solo, it's really tough. So, one thing we saw. Inflation boosted up to 10%, but only for Spain. Everybody else is at 5%. So Spain's beginning to see the effects of having these gold mines. They're overall positive, but they do cost them more than everyone else. But they boost everyone's inflation rate up, which is kind of a cool effect to the game, and I really like the way that dynamic works out. Anyway, I'm going to load this sucker up.